Good afternoon, lovely people. We will get going in just a moment. Hi there, Lauren. Hi, Pamela. Hi, Sammy. Hi, Valerie. Nice to have you with us. We will get going in just a moment. So very lovely to have you all with us. Hi, Linda. Hi, Joe. Nice to see some familiar names I've not spoken to for ages, and some new ones as well. That's very, very lovely. We will get going in just a moment. Give people another couple of seconds to join us, should they wish to do so. Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this safeguarding briefing this November afternoon. I hope you are all well. Over the course of the next 30-ish minutes, I am going to be sharing some updates with you. There's been an awful lot going on, not all of which I have time to share with you, but if you are part of my email list, then I will be sending those updates out to you as well, as they are relevant to the practice that you have and that you undertake. So thank you for coming along. Hi, Emma. Hi, Dawn. Nice to have you with us. Lovely to see, like I say, so many familiar faces and some new ones as well. It's really, really lovely that you could join us this afternoon. So a little bit for those of you who don't know me. Before we go into this, make sure you can hear, make sure you're quiet. And if you've got questions, I always encourage questions. I love questions. One, it tells me you're listening, and two, it shows you're interested as well. So you can either use the Q&A function, is probably the easiest way to do that, or there is a chat function if you want to do that, which is in the little black bar that you will be able to see on your screen. Depending on your device, it'll either be the top, the bottom, or the side of your screen. So feel free to ask away as we go through today's session. So about me, my name is Kate Young. I have far too many years in the child protection sector, mostly as a child protection solicitor. I now am a non-practicing solicitor, and I work predominantly with those in higher education and in apprenticeships, providing training for apprentices, helping them create safe spaces. But I also work with designated safeguarding leads across the age ranges. And I'm the founder of the Safeguarding Association. That's me, that's who I am. And the Safeguarding Association, well, we've become fairly specialist over the last few years. And I think it's my legal brain that does this, but I've become specialist in supporting those who work particularly with 15 to 25-year-olds. It's a delightfully grey area that can be very frustrating and slightly scary for those who work within it. But for some reason, I adore it. I think it just appeals to my legal brain. So if you're working in that particular age range, we are your people. Right then, what has been happening? Well, there's been all sorts going on over the last few weeks and months. We have had a significant publicising around mental health. That's been ongoing for some time. We've had lots of new reports being published. We've had lots of new guidance come out. There's been lots of judgments on various things that have come out, some of which will be relevant to your daily practice, most of which you probably won't ever come across unless you're working specifically at a fairly high level within court proceedings. But there has been absolutely all sorts happening over the last few weeks and months, and we're basically taking a snapshot this afternoon of those areas that are more relevant to your particular area of practice. So we won't be covering everything. So, as usual, I mean, we're now the 15th of November, Keeping Children Safe in Education 2022. is live, has been the guidance in place since the 1st of September 2022. I know schools up and down the country have been implementing some of the changes within it, but what has been less known, and I think possibly less observed by some organisations, is that this applies to apprenticeship providers where they are caught under the Education and Welfare Training Act last year, 2021. So that's a whole host of providers who've now been brought into the remit of Keeping Children Safe in Education 2022. If you are in doubt about whether or not you are caught by it, the chances are you probably are. And it doesn't matter that you may only work with apprentices over the age of 18. If you are caught by virtue of that change in law in 2021, then you will be obliged to work alongside and to undertake the work that's required under Keeping Children Safe in Education 2022. It has been updated. It was updated quite significantly last year in terms of the language it uses to describe should and must actions, particularly when we're talking about over 18s. There was a change last year which meant that 16 to 19 academies were caught by Keeping Children Safe in Education. There was a gap previously that was closed, and that now means that because of that, the language within Keeping Children Safe in Education is much easier to understand if you're working with over 18s as to what you must do and what you should do. The Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse has published its final report. It is incredibly substantial. It is a very thorough report. I'll be honest, I haven't read it all yet. It is substantial, but it brings together all of the learnings that have been taken place over the last few years. And I noticed back end of last week that the Trust Project Facebook page and group that was set up to support the independent inquiry will be archiving its page and group as well in the next few weeks, recognising that the report has now been published. The final report has now been published. It is available online, free to access. Just need to type in into Google the Independent Inquiry Child Sexual Abuse final report. It will come up, but it is substantial. I will happily share links to these if anybody wants them. So please just send me an email and I can send the links through to you. That isn't a problem. Every few years we have, well, every 3 years, we have a major reflection on the serious cases that have taken place. So these used to be serious case reviews. There have been a change in practice. So they're now a review into serious cases, but the child death reviews predominantly, and the rapid learning reviews. So that triennial review has been published. Again, another substantial document, but lots of learning to come out of that. And I will be sharing over the coming months some of those learnings, both from the Independent Inquiry report and also the triennial review, where it particularly relates to those young people that you work with, so that you are aware of those. But I will say this, there's nothing quite like reading it yourself. So if you do find yourself wanting to know more, then both of those reports, like I said, they are available. They are free to find online. They're PDF documents, so they are there and they are useful as a point of reference. They're not easygoing. Let me be really honest here. These are not light bedtime reading at all. These are heavy documents, as you would expect, given the nature of the subject they are discussing. But some good learning coming out of both of them as well. The last one I want to leave you with for the moment is the Children's Commissioner's new guidance for care leavers. The Children's Commissioner seems to have been really active over the last few months as well. So there's lots and lots of guidance coming out of the Children's Commissioner's office, lots of responses. They've published a response to the final report of the Independent Sexual Abuse Inquiry. So keep an eye out for those. There are lots and lots of things coming out. And indeed, not only has the Children's Commissioner produced guidance for care leavers, but they've also produced a guide for care leavers who are starting university. So if you are working sixth form through to higher education, it's worthwhile having a look at what that guidance says, and reflecting on whether or not your practice fits with what the Children's Commissioner is suggesting. We'll also give you an idea of the sorts of things and the sorts of support that will be available or should be available from a local authority as well. And that can be quite useful and quite helpful, particularly from a pastoral perspective when you're working with those who are care leavers. The Commission on Young Lives has been ongoing for some time as well, and their final report has now been published also. There are a whole raft of recommendations within that document. Again, worthwhile having a look to see what is being suggested. Oh, did not mean to stop sharing my screen there, but some of the highlights in relation to the Commission on Young Lives are things like a new Sure Start Plus programme for teenagers, recognising that Sure Start was a well-respected and well-recognised programme. Trying to set up Sure Start Plus hubs, 1,000 of them by 2027, to coordinate and deliver health and education for vulnerable teenagers. Suggested these will be in and around schools and run by charities, public bodies, businesses and philanthropy organisations. Want the Prime Minister to make it a national priority that the crisis of teenage harm and violence is a national threat, trying to help families out of poverty, looking at a one-off mental health recovery programme, looking at a national mission to remove racial bias within schemes, looking at helping to reform the children's social care system, recruiting youth practitioners. And I think for those of you in terms of in and around education, this is the bit that you will need to watch for. So opening all school buildings before and after school, at weekends and during holidays, to provide safe and appealing places for teenagers, staffed by community groups, youth practitioners, volunteers, and financed by funds from dormant bank accounts and national lottery community funding. Encouraging a new era of inclusive education, supporting primary schools to end exclusions in all primaries by 2024, extend SEN support, greater focus on nurture and therapeutic support for vulnerable children, a new inclusion measure to inform Ofsted judgments, and the scrapping of pupil referral units with specialist provision established in and around schools instead. So it's huge, the recommendations that this commission has come out with, and certainly something for those of you in and around the education area to be seriously aware of as and when these issues do arise in your local area. So those are the reports primarily, and now I want to share some of the legal updates with you. This came out in July 2022, so there's new guidance on virginity testing. For one, it's illegal, so there's now there's new legislation around it, and there's been new guidance around it as well. A new inquiry has been launched in and around honour-based abuse, looking to understand that more and how best to tackle that particular issue, given how all-encompassing it can be as well. I think interestingly for me, something that I know I've talked about previously, and I know has been the subject of a number of training sessions I've delivered, is around the impact of families separating. And we knew that in the first 3 months of lockdown, so March to end of May, June 2020, there was a 42% increase in the number of inquiries around divorce and separation. What we now know is that last year, divorces were up by 10%. So that's huge. That is a significant increase in the number of divorces. I don't know whether that's all to do with COVID and lockdown, or whether there are probably a host of other factors going on there as well. But what we do know as practitioners is that divorce has an impact. We also know, because we're facing it every day, that where families have separated, we see that for most families, their finances are significantly depleted. They go from having 2 incomes to 1 income to support the same lifestyle, and that's incredibly difficult. We're also facing a cost of living crisis, or we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis. So again, for me, that statistic is enormous, but it's also the ripple effect that statistic has, that I suspect many of you are seeing in your schools, but also I suspect there are those of you who are seeing it amongst your workforce as well, where there is this ripple effect in terms of finances, in terms of just wider family support, may not be there in the way that it was previously, which can have an impact on staff members being at home, staff members being in the office, students being in school, out of school, in education, out of education, those sorts of things as well. So it is one of those areas that does have that unfortunate, significant ripple effect. This update I was really pleased to read, and it's a particular legal update, because it's around a legality within the civil procedure rules around when you make an application, you have to disclose your address. There have been mechanisms in place within family law to withhold addresses subject to the court's approval. Again, we now have a new civil procedure rule which will mirror that, which will allow people to withhold their addresses in proceedings. So, for example, where there is a domestic abuse case, if they do have to make a civil claim against their former partner, then they have the ability to withhold their address, which they may not have been able to do so previously. So it is a peculiar legal thing, but it is worthwhile knowing that if somebody is frightened of taking court proceedings because they're worried they might have to tell their partner where they are, there is now a mechanism that has been there in family law, but is now mirrored now within civil procedures, that they can withhold their address. So that might allow some victims to feel more confident to make an application to court if they aren't going to need to share their address. I'm thinking here, you might have cases where there are claims for debts, or there are issues around housing, where people aren't married, things like that ongoing could be helpful to somebody that you may come across. And that's, in a nutshell, the updates that we have had. Like I said, there are a whole host of things happen. There are reports published pretty much every day in relation to safeguarding. Those are our highlights of what has been happening, and certainly worthwhile taking a look at some of those big reports which have been published. Like I say, I will be sharing those. Certainly, I'll be sharing those specifically with Safeguarding Leaders Hub members. We are accepting new members into the Safeguarding Leaders Hub, specifically for safeguarding leads, to get some one-to-one support and group support around issues that you deal with on a daily basis, so nobody is ever on their own. We do have some upcoming training as well, which is open courses. So if you have staff who need to undertake their level 3/4 designated safeguarding lead training, then I have an initial programme on the 25th and 26th of January 2023. And that is aimed specifically at those working with the older age range, so that you understand how that interplays with child protection procedures, and also with some of the adult procedures as well. And then we have a designated safeguarding lead refresher on the 15th of February 2023. Oh, let me go back a moment. If you are a Safeguarding Leaders Hub member, then refresher training is included in your membership. Be aware of that. Yes, there is a cost to being attached to being in the hub. If you email me, then I will let you know what those costs are, so that you can see them and you can create a business case in relation to them, but there is a cost attached to it. If you would like any more information, then please feel free to email us, and we will be able, I'll be able, unless my delightful assistant is around, to send you more information about that. If you do have any questions in the meantime, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A or in the chat, and I'll give you a couple of moments to do that. Otherwise, thank you very, very much for attending, and I will see you either in our Facebook group, or I will see you on the email. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.